We'll do this and okay. So welcome Ballast Book Co. and everyone here to Julie and Ash, and we'll take it away with. Should we do local first?
Sure. That works.
So welcome to Ash Fan Otterloo with their book Cattywampus.
Yay! Thank you so much. I'm just going to read a little excerpt to start with. Is that okay?
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Delpha sighed and then held her breath and darted into the shadowy room, rushing past the empty bed and her grandma's walker to the closet. She scowled. Her mama planned to sell Mama's quilts to the Appalachian Culture Museum near downtown Howler's Hollow, where where tourists would coo over intricate stitchwork and fork over their cash. Mama had put it off for days, and Delpha had secretly hoped she wouldn't go through with it. It was like they were trading a part of her grandmother away, but she and Mama needed money to keep the lights on, especially after paying for the funeral. Just get it done, Delpha told herself. Don't overthink it. She yanked the string for the closet light and stood on her tiptoes, reaching for a stack of folded quilts. And as she eased them from the top of the shelf, something heavy and brown slid off the top of the stack and clocked her senseless right across the forehead. Delpha lay dazed on the wooden floorboards for a minute, constellations swirling before her eyes. A tender spot throbbed just beneath her hairline. She muttered dark things under her breath and pushed herself upright. What was that? Delpha, her mother called. Everything all right in there, baby girl? Yeah, fine, Delpha replied. She reached up and tested the tender spot. A furious bump the size of a sparrow's egg greeted her fingertips. Even better if Moma'd use her healing magic for once, Delpha muttered to herself. But that was out of the question. Magic was strictly forbidden in the McGill household, bruises or not. It had been since her mama's siblings had been killed decades ago in a spell gone bad. Delpha's grandmother had whispered muddled stories to Delpha about the old witching days, sometimes when Mama wasn't listening. But Mama was gone now. People got old. They got dementia and died, even old witches. And if there was one thing in the world reliable as rain, it was that everybody left eventually. Delpha breathed deep, feeling the tight clamp of sadness in her chest. It was just her and Mama now. Presently, she twisted this way and that to find what had hit her on the head. Cracked with age, a thick leather book lay splayed open, like a bird shot from the sky mid-flight, and Delpha's brows furrowed. She squatted and gathered it together, her tight bootlaces creaking. Flipping it right side up, her heart jittered in her chest. In neat letters, tooled into the leather cover, were the words, McGill Book of Spells. Delpha blinked in disbelief. You had it all along, Mama, you old devil, Delpha whispered. She'd spent dozens of afternoons combing her grandmother's shelves when she was little, looking for the family's book of spells, curiosity burning a hole in her. Magic had sounded exciting. Forbidden magic had sounded even more tempting. She'd even sneaked up to scour the moth-riddled attic once through the rafters of the old cabin, though the rafters of the cabin were unstable and off limits. And now the spellbook was here in her lap. Leave it to crafty Mama to put it somewhere casual, knowing Delpha would never look anyplace so boring. The book called to her now, and every atom in Delpha's body thrummed back in response. This book knew her. She knew it, too. It lived in late-night arguments between her grandma and Mama, atop the laps of grim, sharp-eyed crones and yellowed family photos, and, most powerfully, in the lonely corners of Delpha's own imagination. Delpha's long fingers trembled as they traced the binding. The McGill spellbook. Delpha, if we don't carry those quilts to the Hearns Museum soon, it'll close. Shake a leg. Quiet as a deer, Delpha slid a threadbare pillowcase from the linen trunk and nestled the spellbook inside it. She gripped it in her hands a few seconds, wishing she could read it right then. If she could study magic on the slide, things might start looking up for her and Mama. And maybe Delpha could fix things up around her house with magic too. Maybe there are spells for money. They might have plenty for once. Coming, Mama. The weight of Delpha's secret tugged her gut, promising to rearrange her life 9 ways to Sunday if she let it. Delpha slid the wrapped book back onto the shelf and cracked her knuckles. I'll be back for you later, she promised the book in a low voice. She gathered the quilts up neatly, then hurried out to Mama's rusty old Buick. That's it.
Okay, very nice. Thank you. And now we'll move on to an excerpt from Julie's book, who is on the screen on my left, but maybe different for you guys. And her book, Ava Evergreen.
Hi.
Magical Witch.
Thank you. So I'm Julie Abbott, author of Ava Evergreen, Semi Magical Witch, and I'm going to start just from reading the beginning. Thank you for everyone joining today. I see, I think I even see a wolfhound somewhere in one of the videos. Love it. He's adorable. So let me start from the beginning. Let's see. Eva Evergreen, Semi Magical Witch. And then part 1, the journey begins. Okay. So I'm going to do just a really short reading. And just as a brief intro, Eva Evergreen, Semi Magical Witch is a story about a girl, a 12-year-old girl with just a pinch of magic, and she has to pass her witch's quest or she's going to lose her powers forever. And so this is the start. Chapter 1, The Enchanted Bookstore. I really like the cover chapter header art, so I want to share it with you all. So the Enchanted Bookstore. The bell above the door chimed, and magic tingled at my fingertips. The scent of ink and freshly printed paper swirled invitingly in the air as I followed my parents into the bookshop. Today was my last day as just an apprentice witch. The last few moments of being the unreliable Eva who summoned heads of cabbage instead of flowers, or got a sunburn instead of calling down rain. Or, at least, I hoped it was the end of all that. Are you ready, Eva? Mother nudged my shoulder. I tightened my hands around the straps of my knapsack and summoned up a smile. I'm ready. A set of bright, spectacled brown eyes peeped out from a teetering stack of books at the counter in the center. Welcome to Enchanted Ink, Ravel Realm's one and only magical bookshop. Kaya Iko, the bookseller, dipped into a bow, her black tunic fluttering around her. Ah, now look, miss. Aniso, I did so enjoy the use of lemon trifles that Nila brought to tea the other day. My stomach usually growled at the thought of father's brown Mavis pastries, but today it turned queasily. My father smiled. My pleasure. I'll bring over my latest creations next time we're in the city. Kaya's warm eyes crinkled with delight when she spotted me behind Mother. And Eva, so good to see you here. Hello, Iko. My heartbeat fluttered as I paused in the wide aisle leading to her counter. Books lined the walls, all the way up to the dim window cut in the ceiling. One of these books will be mine for my quest, so long as I can summon it. Go on, Eva. You can do this, Mother murmured, as if she had heard my thoughts. She adjusted my pointy hat, smiling down at me. At first glance, Mother and I almost looked like mirror reflections. We had the same inky black hair, resting slightly below our shoulders, rounded brown eyes, and slight tans from summer afternoons in the garden. We even had the same black witches' dresses. But that was where the similarities ended. That's just my brief intro to my book.
Thank you so much, Julie. So now, I think since I missed giving one for Ash, could we get a little bit of an intro on what Cattywampus is about after that great excerpt?
Yes. Oh my gosh. I absolutely adore Eva Evergreen. It's so good. I want her to keep reading forever.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So Cattywampus is a story about 2 witches that live in Howler's Hollow, which is a fictional city in North Carolina. And they both come from magical families, and a magical truce has been called because their ancestors have feuded for such a long time. But now both kids, even though the magic is completely forbidden, want to do it. So Delpha finds a spell book and starts a DIY magic course, and they accidentally fight with each other with spells and resurrect an entire graveyard full of witch ancestors, which start feuding immediately. So now they have to figure out how to undo the spell and save Howler's Hollow.
Very exciting. So now I'm going to hopefully we're going to try something out that I think will hopefully be fun. It will involve using the chat for everyone watching, because we're going to play a bit of a game with our authors today. We're going to play Two Truths and a Lie. And we're going to have a couple of rounds for each author. And round one is going to be, should we do writing process? Let's do the writing process. So writing their books. And we're going to have Julie, we'll have Julie start because I see that she's ready. Or well, she's unmuted. So she's going to be ready.
Perfect. Okay, I'm going to pull it up because I had to write it down because I cannot make it up on the spot. So, all right. So I'll do three. I'm going to list three things. And I guess in the chat, you can say which one you think is the lie.
Mm-hmm.
So number one, and this is about writing process. So number one, I'm a plantser. And so those who don't know, a plantser is a half plotter and a half pantser. So half the time I have an outline, half the time if this is me, I fly by the seat of my pants. Number two, I build out my world using 100-page slide decks. Number three, I write every draft on paper before typing it out on my computer. All right, so.
Okay, so we'd love to see everyone in the chat going across here. Ooh, I see a lot of ones, a lot of twos. It looks like a pretty even.
It looks really even.
Even split to me. So I don't. Let's see. Let's go through. There's a lot of ones. So it was seat of your pants versus planning. It was 100 side decks and
then three was
everything out on
typing.
paper.
Yes.
Okay, which was your lie?
So I am a plantser. I plot, and then once I have a rough outline, I just go for it, and I use whatever I feel in my heart and start writing. And then two, I do sadly have 100+ page Google Slide doc with like the world and all that, like spells, everything, what they wear, characters. So that, for better or worse, is true. And I do not write or handwrite everything before I type it on my computer. Yeah, no one would be able to read my handwriting, least of all me.
Kit in the chat says, I knew it. It's very great. So I love hearing about world building. So that's always a fun one to see how people do it through Google Docs or mood boards or things like that. So I personally think that is a great thing.
I mean, otherwise people would be doing like completely different things in my world, so I need it.
And then let's flip over to Ash, and same thing, round one, writing process, two truths and a lie.
I have also written it down. No way could I remember it otherwise. Let's see. So I need complete and utter silence to write. I never write with pen and paper. And I rewrote the ending of Cattywampus 4 times.
Ooh. So need silence. Don't write with pen and paper. Any
You guys, ignore my editor. He's cheating.
Hmm. And then what was number 3 again?
It was a good guess.
Oh, lots of guessing. This one also seems lots of 1s, lots of 2s.
Yeah, it seems Daniel says he must abstain. That's my brother.
So, which is your lie?
The lie is that I need complete silence to write. I've written in some really, I have 4 kids in my house, so I've written in some really hectic environments. And I think my most hardcore writing story is that one day I was writing, like my oldest 2 kids were playing soccer at the time. And so they were on the practice field and I was just like cross-legged on the soccer field, typing away and squinting at my screen because it was bright outside. And a soccer ball came from like a rocket-legged 15-year-old and just right in the head. And I was like, ugh, and then I just kept writing. And there people were like, whoa. What are you doing? I'm writing a book. There are deadlines. This is important. So, yeah.
Oh, boy.
I'm glad you're all in one piece and you're able to finish Cattywampus.
Yes, absolutely. I was glad that that didn't knock
gosh.
me completely off track. Very similarly to you, I have to keep a document with like every character's details, like if they have like little personal histories and things. Because I like to rabbit trail, and if I don't confer with myself on a regular basis, it'll get all scrambled. So yeah, gotta have those documents.
So we'll move on to round 2, and round 2 is about book plot for 2 Truths and a Lie. And I think maybe we'll horseshoe, so we'll go Ash first this time. And Brennan, Nate, and I say, will it get cattywampus?
Wow, wow.
So 2 Truths and a Lie about the plot of your book.
Okay. So these are kind of about the book and inspiration for the book. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Okay. So here we go. Buckle up, I guess. Okay. All the zombies that are named like by name in the book are named after actual family members of mine. My great grandmother had a raccoon named Stinky, who I based Podge off of. And the character who's the most like me is actually Tyler.
Okay, everyone in the chat. Everyone is named after, or all of those zombies are named of family members. Stinky is the basis for Podge. I keep forgetting 3. How can I not hold 3 things in my head?
This is why they're written down. That's why I got it written.
Same. I couldn't. I had to write it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I could read it one more time if you need me to.
Sure. Let's go one more time.
Okay, the zombies are named after family members. My great-grandmother had a raccoon named Stinky, who I based Podge off of, and the character who's most like me is Tyler. Those are the ones.
Okay. So I think I see mostly 3s here, I think is what I see here.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of threes.
So,
okay, are we ready?
ready for your lie.
Okay.
We all believe in Stinky.
I know. Okay, well, I kind of cheated a little bit on this one. All the zombies are named after people in my family tree. My brother is really good at genealogy, so yeah. So I named all the zombies after my actual ancestors, I guess. The character who's most like me is actually Tyler. My great grandmother had an animal named Stinky, who I loosely based Podge off of, but it was actually a skunk. Yeah.
Wait. We need to know more about Stinky now.
Okay, so apparently you can like they have like stink glands. I don't know what they're called scientifically, but you know, they've got like the stink juice. So she had him like fixed so that he didn't have those anymore. And yeah, she had Stinky the skunk for like, I don't know, 5 years, 6 years.
Like an indoor.
Like an indoor skunk. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I had a great aunt, her daughter, who was a lot like Katie Bird. Like she just rehabilitated animals and then just kept them. It was a different time. I don't think you can do it legally anymore, but yeah. So there you
That's
go.
awesome.
Yeah.
Stinky the skunk.
Stinky the skunk.
That's great. And now back over to Julie for Two Truths and a Lie about Ava Evergreen.
So I gotta say though, Tyler is one of my favorite characters because he's so like amazing. So we need to hang out in real life after all this wildness is over. All right. So my three truths and a lie. Sorry, two truths and a lie. Okay, number one. Eva's titles, which is currently Eva Evergreen, Semi-Magical Witch, has changed more than 10 times. Eva's story originally started as a young adult novel. And 3, in the final version, Eva goes to her town on a boat. But in the first draft, she went by train. So just as a refresher, number 1 is title 10 times, 2 is young adult, and 3 is boat or train.
Boat or train? That's a fun one. Oh, I love trains in fantasy novels. Just as a personal one. I see lots of ones, I think. Maybe 2s. Or split between 2 and 3. So
Seems like a lot of 2s and 3s.
yeah, a lot of 2s.
Okay.
So which is our lie? Young adult novel? Is it the lie?
So, starting with number 3. In the final version, she does go to her town by boat, but the first draft she went by train, and that's because in Japan, like the main form of transportation is train, so train was the first thing that came to mind when I was thinking of let's go places. And then number 1, Eva's title, Eva Evergreen Semi-Magical Witch, it has changed times, like more than 10 times. Like Eva Evergreen Semi-Magical Witch, Eva Semi-Magical Repair Shop, Magical Misadventures. Like I could go on for days. So number 2 is the lie. It was never a young adult novel. It was always middle grade.
I have no idea how it would have gone for it to start as a young adult novel. This is just so perfect as a great little coming of age story.
Thank you.
So now I'd like to open it up for everyone to unmute their mics, and we can do some Q&A if people would like to. Or just do a lot of questions. I've got a few, because my favorite is, how did you decide on your final titles for both of you? Because that's always, I think, Cattywampus is one of my favorite words. Is a fun thing, and then I love hyphenated words in titles. So having semi-magical is a very fun one for me. But how do you come up with a title is always a fun question. Or I think it's a fun question. It may be a question that you hate. I'm sorry.
Ash, do you want to go first?
So Cattywampus is one of those like miraculous, I'm probably never gonna have this experience again. We hit like it started as Cattywampus, and it's never been anything but Cattywampus. Like I literally, the first thing that I wrote down I sat down and I wrote the scene where Delpha makes her wand. And at the top of that paper, actually, lied. I do that one time I wrote something down with pen and paper because I was at the park and I was like, oh, I have to write this. So I just started scribbling in a notebook that I had, and I just scrawled Cattywampus at the top of it. And that's the name of the book, and it probably won't ever happen again.
Okay.
I love that. Oh, I wish I could have the same experience. But my title, so originally it started with Eva being more about her semi-magical repair shop, which is a theme still throughout the story because she is semi-magical. She's not as strong as her mother or as any of the, honestly, as any of the other witches and wizards in the realm. So semi-magical has always been a huge theme. But to be honest, my editor, Alvina Ling at Little Brown Young Readers, she was like, I like how Eva Evergreen semi-magical witch. And I'm like, okay, because I haven't gone through 10, 20 different titles, and if you like it, I like it too. I actually had a question for Ash. I was wondering how you decided on the location. It's so vivid to me, and I love it so much. I've never been to the Appalachians or in North Carolina. Like, I've never been anywhere close to that. But like when I read Cattywampus, it felt like I was there. So I'm kind of curious, like where that came from and how you made it magic on page happen.
Well, I guess I don't have a memory of ever living somewhere that doesn't have mountains. Like I remember the first time I took a trip to, I guess it was Kansas I went to, I had like a mini panic attack because I felt so exposed. Because if you live in the woods near like the Great Smoky Mountains and the foothills there, like you can't see storm coming. There are hills everywhere you look, like unless you're up on a mountaintop, like you don't really get a view of things far, far away. So like, having grown up somewhere like that, it was kind of a really natural setting. And to me, I wanted to write kind of an homage to, I guess, like the nature setting that I love so much, into like a culture that is really complex, that was deeply complex for me to grow up in. So I just kind of went for it. Like in a lot of ways, it's me writing what I knew from childhood, and a lot of people that I knew from childhood, and in a lot of ways, it's kind of like a tall tale Southern yarn too. There's a lot of like almost big fish fantasy, I guess, involved in some of it. Yeah, so uh, it was honestly just a case of me writing what I know. I would love to know similarly, like how did you put together the world for Eva Evergreen? It's so like I was saying before we started talking, like the world building reminds me so much of like Howl's Moving Castle, or like all things Ghibli. Like there's just, it's so infused with magic. Like even the objects have a lot of magical sense about them, and I love it so much. I want to just like wrap up in it like a quilt and stay there for several days. It's wonderful. So I would love to hear about like your process of how you even began to put something like that together, because it blows my mind.
Right now, considering everything going on, I would travel into Eva's world in a heartbeat. For me, but how I came up with it, a lot of it was just through like so many drafts of just adding in detail by detail, layer by layer. Like the food, that was for sure the easiest part because I just thought of whatever I was hungry for at the moment, and I was like, okay, that's going in here, that's going in. So that was super easy. The flame flocks, which I see people talking about, that's Umber. Umber right there. He is a flame fox, which is part fox, part dog, part fire breathing dragon, all in one. And he's actually based off of my Shiba Inu. Her name's Momo. She is just as always hungry as him, just as much trouble, but just as lovable. So that's my world building. I just used my dog.
Okay, so a question from Suzanne. Are you both working on new books yet? Ooh, can you talk about that yet?
I guess I can go first. For me, I'm working on Eva 2, and I turned in past pages like, yes, 11:58 Thursday. PM. So right before my deadline.
Oh, Ash, I think maybe you're still muted.
Yeah, I'm trying to fix it. My computer is being ornery. Yeah, that's so exciting. I'm excited that there's another Eva book coming. That's awesome. I am about to start editing round 2 on another book that's based loosely in Howler's Hollow. So, and this one is about ghosts. It has a non-binary character, which I'm really excited about. And this one is, I think, a little bit more creepy than Cattywampus was, but it has like similar vibes. And there are a couple of little cameos by characters from Cattywampus in this book. So I'm really excited. That was a treat to get to do that again. So I'm excited about it.
Can you say a title, or is it not?
I think the working title right now is A Touch of Ruckus.
Oh, that's right. I think I've seen it.
Yes. Yeah. So I'm really excited about it. It's always good to be moving to the next thing too, because writers, it makes you feel it's like it's meditative. There's something nice about being in the middle of a new writing project. Like debuting is fun, but it's fun to have something else in the works too. It's good for the soul.
From Kate, we have, how did you all come up with the names other than for the zombies? So for both of you, how did you come with names in your books?
Should I go first? I guess I'll jump in. So for the names in my book, I used a lot of Japanese names because it's a Japanese inspired world. For some people, you might be like, oh, like Eva Evergreen, like that's an American name. But in many aspects, like for me, I was born in Japan, but mostly raised in the US. But still, despite that, I still feel Japanese, but also American. And my name is Julie. Like Julie is American, quote unquote, but also I do feel Japanese. I didn't think a name had to be necessarily Japanese to fit. For her last name, Evergreen, that is actually one, I like the name Evergreen. I think there's something very fitting with Eva. For her, she continually tries and does not give up, even though she's not as strong or smart as or powerful as other witches and wizards. And another thing is there's a story about this pine tree. I don't know if folks have heard, but back in 2011, there was the Tohoku earthquake in Japan. I was there living in Japan at the time, and it was a 9.0 earthquake off the eastern coast. And there's this story, my family were fine. We were all fine. We were lucky, very lucky. We were lucky ones. But there's a story about this pine tree in the area that was impacted by the tsunami. And it was just this one pine tree that, despite all the water, everything going through, that one pine tree continued to stand up and survive through everything that had happened. And I was like, I think Evergreen is the best name for her. It really does fit. So yeah, and the other names, it depends on the characters, but kind of like the food, it was the first name that came. It would sometimes be the first name that came to mind. What about you, Ash?
That's so cool. Oh my gosh, I love that story. Well, I think that Delta's first name has always just been Delta. I don't know how that happened. It just pops into my head and I couldn't change it to anything else. But her last name, Miguel, is actually, I was looking through a document of, I think it was from perhaps Scotland, about, oh crap, now I'm not going to be able to think of the name of it. Sorry for saying crap. Um, but it was about the witches that were tried in Scotland, and it was like the last witches that they have like actual documentation of them being tried and convicted of witchcraft in Scotland, and McGill was the name of one of them. And there's not even a transcription, so I had to get in there with like the Zoom button and try to like decipher people's handwriting because it's just copied in. But I thought that would be kind of a cool way to honor some of the people that happened to. So that's where her last name came from. And Katie Bird is actually kind of similar to, I had a neighbor whose name was, I think they called her Katie Bell. So not her personality, but a lot of her like just general traits remind me a lot of that neighbor that I had when I was a little girl. So she was Katie Bird, yeah. And that's it.
Are you still in touch with that neighbor, or does she...
Oh no, it was so long ago. It was like I think I must have been 5 or 6 at the time. So yeah, not in touch with them anymore. I'd love to know what happened to them. I think there might be actually an Imogen in that book too, and that was her grandmother's name.
From Lauren, what was the most surprising part of the publishing process for you both? Debut authors.
The pandemic. I think we that was definitely a surprise. But other than that, I think a good surprise I had was the cover art. So this cover, I never imagined in a million years I would get a cover like this. In many ways, I feel like I won the cover lottery because the artist is just so amazing, and there's so many little details. Like, I don't know if you can tell from here, but there's like a Japanese temple, and like the streets, the way the houses are, or like the houses, like I sent a concept photo of the houses that I like love walking through when I'm in Japan. So yeah, I think the cover was one of the best surprises of publishing.
I think for me, the part of it that was surprising just overall is how slow and fast everything moves. Like there are some moments where you feel like all you're gonna do is wait around forever. And then when things start moving, they really start moving. Like I think they started having cover art for Cattywampus, and then ARCs came out very quickly after. And then I don't know, it moves so swiftly. I think I was also pleasantly surprised by, I'm very lucky that everybody that I've worked with on the different teams that worked on Cattywampus has just been very just smart and sensitive and supportive as people, very positive, very very interested in like what my vision and heart for the story was and the readership, and very willing to kind of like hop on board and be supportive and make that happen. So that was really great. It was a good thing. I mean, I wasn't expecting people to be negative, of course, but it's always nice whenever people believe in something as hard as you do. Because writing can feel like, I think, such a private process, like when you're first drafting before other people are involved. So to have other people get in and read it and say, oh, I see what you're doing there. Let's support that in this way. It's always super validating. And it's nice to see that your story has translated well.
Always great to get support for sure. From Jean, I'm hoping it's Jean. Sorry. What made you want to write about witches, and why have characters who haven't mastered magic yet? Let's jump to maybe Ash first on this one.
Well, honestly, I think the thing that prompted me to begin writing witches in the first place was when I was but a young aspiring writer, I was scrolling through query wishlist on Twitter, the hashtag. And so somebody said, why aren't there any witches from Appalachia? And then I was like, why aren't there any witches from Appalachia? And then I decided, well, I want to write that. That would be really great, because I've always loved stories about witches, and I've been like kind of drawn to, you know, magic trope in general. So that was kind of the prompt, the thing that lit the fire under my seat for me. And I thought it was really important to have witches who, I don't know, I don't think it's very normal for people to have an ability or something that is even just an aspiration for them, that it comes easily for them to begin with. Things don't come easy to people. It's hard. And I think that kids know that probably more than anybody, because, you know, they're having to learn resilience for the first time, and they're having to learn trying again, even though they haven't mastered something. And so I thought, yeah, it's really important that you have stories about people who have a hard time of it, because life isn't easy. And I think that it makes the triumphs that much sweeter too, when you learn to go after it with tenacity. How about you, Julie?
That is a good question. So, and I love your answer. I agree. I think there's something magical about middle grade and witches, because especially witches that aren't very magical or trying to figure out their magic. Because I think that's something about middle grade readers. It's something that they're running through and figuring out who they are and what they're capable of. When they're capable of so much, but they don't sometimes realize it yet. And then for me, when I was writing Eva, I was actually querying a different story, an adult story, and I wasn't feeling very confident about it. And I felt in many ways, I felt like semi, you know, like not all good enough, but I was trying. And so the character of Eva came to mind, and in my mind, she's like a witch without a lot of power, and I was like, that's me with writing. Like I'm a writer without a lot of writing power. So that sort of like flesh sort of came together and became what the story is now.
Okay, on a similar note, Elena asks about the querying experience with both of your books, shopping around for writing something. Talking maybe a little bit about that and what it is and how it went.
Ooh. I'll go first, and I'll try to give a very short experience. But so I've been writing. Well, first, when I was younger, I didn't think I could ever become a writer. I was like, to be honest, there's not many Japanese American writers out there, and if they are, they wrote about the internment, which is for me my grandparents' story, and it's not really my story. So I was like, I'm not gonna become a writer. And then as I grew older, as I started working my day job, I realized I wanted to do something more, like something that made me really happy. And I realized in time that was writing. But I knew nothing about publishing. I think it's one thing to be like, yes, I can write, and one thing like different to be, I want to be published. So my querying experience, I started querying a young adult. I didn't know how querying worked. I queried like 5 people over a year, 5 agents over a year, and it wasn't going so well, because I honestly, I never had a critique partner. I didn't know. I just didn't know how writing worked. So then when I got the idea for Eva, when I was querying my young adult, I started writing that, and I was like, I really like this story. And this is a story, if I were to debut, like I want to debut with this story. And so I entered a writing mentorship contest called Author Mentor Match. And I was selected by this great author. His name's Sean Easley. His book is The Hotel Between, which is a middle grade fantasy. And he gave me feedback. I met critique partners that were amazing and helped me get feedback, the feedback I needed to really polish my story, polish my query even, and change my writing so much for the better. And after that, so after like I edited the heart out of that story, I found there's nothing more that I felt I could do to make the story better. And I knew that was when I wanted to query agents this time. And then I sent out queries, and for a while there's just silence. And maybe 6 weeks later, I got an email from an agent who is now my current agent, Sarah Landis, and she said, "Hey, want to chat?" And I was like, "Yeah, I want to chat." And from there, I got other agent offers, but Sarah was the one who saw Eva first for what it could be, and so I went with her.
So I also didn't know that I wanted to be a writer. Like I started playing around with very, very short stories probably, oh wow, 6 years ago, 7 years ago. And I just joined a writers group because I had kind of fallen into a period of like a little bit of depression after my youngest now child was born. And she was very small back then. And so I started thinking, well, I'm just going to do this for self-care. I'm just going to sit down and write these fantastic stories and kind of like try to jumpstart my creativity and imagination again. And so I did. And before I knew it, like I think maybe a year later, I had a book and it was terrible. It was my first book and I will always love it for being my first book. But I mean, it wasn't great, but just like magic, often your first try at something is not your, your best end result. So I queried that one like maybe 3 times before I got a little bit of feedback that clued me in on the fact that, wow, I really need to like go see what this craft is about. So I wrote another book and I queried that one a lot. And during that time, I was doing a lot of One Line Wednesday on Twitter. I entered a couple of pitch contests and I think I made it like past the first round for a couple of them, which enabled me to meet a lot of really cool people who became my critique partners. And that's when my writing started to actually improve. So then I started writing part of another book, and then the idea of Cattywampus kind of fell out of the sky. And I worked really hard on Cattywampus. And it went through several rounds of critique partners before I started querying it. And I think I queried it to 2 people, and then I entered, I think it was one of the dark middle grade pitch contests. And during that, I got a message from Lauren Spieler, and she was like, I really like this. Do you want to have a phone call? Can we talk on the phone? And so we started talking about Cattywampus, but it needed a lot of work. And I was like, Triada US's website had been like pinned on my inspiration board on my background for my computer for, I don't know, a year and a half. And I loved Lauren after talking to her. So I was like, yeah, we'll do revise and resubmit. And so I revised it, I think twice before I resubmitted. And then about a year later, I had an offer for representation. So like Cattywampus went kind of fast, but also kind of slow, because after the initial interest from Lauren, I did a lot of work on it, like a whole lot of work on it before we were officially signed. So yeah. Its journey was a little bit short, but everything leading up to it was long.
So next up, we have Naya, who wants to ask their question live.
Ready?
Both of you, what kind of magic and
Is in your book? What kind of magic is in your book?
What kind of magic is in your book, and who helped you write it?
Ash, do you want to go first?
That is an excellent question, Naya. The kind of magic that's in my book, the 2 girls do slightly different kinds of magic. So one of them has magic that comes mainly from spells. So she can do spells from the spell book, but also she has the ability to kind of manipulate objects with her mind. But she's not very good at it to begin with, and a lot goes wrong. And the other one has the ability to talk to nature around her and kind of allow nature to help her do things. And who helped me with the magic in my book? Honestly, people who asked good questions. People who said, well, this doesn't really make sense to me. Or what are the rules behind this? And that was often my spouse. It was my agent, Lauren. It was my editor, Jenny, and also often my kids. So they were very helpful at poking holes in my magic system and helping me make sure that everything ran very smoothly. Julie?
I love that answer. I love that question. Thanks for asking. So the kind of magic, so Eva, in Eva's world, there's all kinds of magic. There's like repair magic, there's knowledge magic, there's different like specializations of magic. And magic is sort of in your blood, and kind of in the way that like you have like a cup of water and you sort of like spill it out. Like if you use your magic, you have to, it spills out, and then you have to rest and refresh yourself to fill your cup of magic back up again. And so for who helped me with my magic, I would say it's very similar to Ash. It's my critique partners, the people who said, hey, this doesn't make sense, or how does this work? Or my editor who, I mean, it'll be like, can you explain a little bit more about this for the world? And just those questions were really helpful and helped me figure out what I needed to make my story understandable and connect with readers.
From Katya, we have, I love Delpha and Catybird. Catybird? Catybird? I have different pronunciations, maybe. If you had to give them theme songs, what would they be? And same question for Eva.
Okay, that's a really good question. Okay, what was the first part of it again? I'm trying to hold the whole thing in my head.
If you had to give them theme songs, each of your main characters, what would
I actually later tonight, I am going to post on my website, on my author blog, a playlist for Cattywampus so that people can listen through and see which songs. So Bravery Be Written would be Katybird's. And bless her heart, Delpha's is probably nobody's fault but mine. Yeah. Yeah, and the entire playlist that I listened to was really heavy on folk music and bluegrass, I think. Yeah.
So I guess for Eva, it's a lot of songs about believing in yourself. So there's like Fight Song by Rachel Platten, where it's literally like the singer is like starting out, it's like starting out as a whisper and then she like launches into her song. That's kind of like Eva's story in a way too, where she like believes in herself this much and she finally learns to believe in herself. And there's another song, it's called, I don't know if you'd be familiar with this, but it's called Anpanman. It's actually by a South Korean band named BTS, but this is Anpanman. You can see he is actually in the theme of me constantly being hungry. He is basically a pastry, and he's also a superhero. But the way his power works is he gives part of himself. See how his face? That's his bread face. So he takes a bit of himself and throws it to his people in need and feeds them and gives them strength. So that that song, Anpanman, is also one of Eva's theme songs.
Oh, I haven't seen Anpanman in ages.
It's a childhood classic. I love it.
From Daniel, why did you choose to write in first person and third person? And were there any drafts of your books where the the writing perspective was different?
I guess I can start with this one. So like I mentioned, Eva's had many drafts. I think I mentioned a bit, but the beginning was one of the parts I struggled with the most. And in the beginning is where I start like figuring out, okay, this is the point of view that works best. And so Eva is currently is in first person. But there are times where I thought, maybe I'll just put the prologue in third person and everything else could be in first person, and things like that. But apparently it's kind of confusing when it goes like that, so I don't really recommend it usually. But I think for Eva, first person worked because it's such a story that comes from her heart, and having that be in first person made it feel more real and immediate as a reader. And third person made it feel a little bit more distant, just for Eva's story. But it just really depends on the story, because I've written other stories after that are third person, and I feel like it works really, really well. So yeah, this is just for Eva's story decided to be first person. She decided, not me.
That is so relatable. Yeah, you don't get to choose always. I think for Cattywampus, because I think since Delpha's arc is like a very big part of the story, and she starts out so closed as a person, and her journey is gradually opening up to other people. Third person worked really well for that, because I thought it might be kind of cheating to give an intimate window into her soul immediately. She's the kind of person that really makes you work to get to know her. So I thought that would be helpful for that. Also, it's written in dual point of view, so it's Delpha and Katie Bird, and to me, it felt more natural to not use first person for both of them, at least for this book. I don't know about books in the future. We'll see. They want what they want.
I've heard that before from. So then we've got two Nate questions in a row. One from In Your House, maybe, Nate Van Otterloo, with, what do you hope people will take away from your books after they read them?
You can go first, Ash.
I think that I would love it if people could read Cattywampus and come away with a sense that no matter what the big emotional bugaboo is in your life, the thing that's very difficult for you, whether that means standing in your own power and kind of detaching a little bit from others and making space for yourself, like as the case was for Katie Bird, or whether that means opening up and letting somebody else be part of your process, which was the case for Delpha. I hope that you feel brave enough to do it and know that the whole world won't fall apart if you do the thing that terrifies you. Usually we have some kind of like wisdom inside of ourselves that's nudging us towards something that feels uncomfortable, and it's a different kind of feeling dangerous. It's not like, don't go in there, that's where the monster is dangerous. It's like, yeah, you should do that even though it's hard. And I think most people know the difference. So, I hope that it bolsters people a little bit and makes them think that they might be able to face down their hard thing.
I love that. I also love the word bugaboo, because I think it's not used enough in everyday conversation. Um, for me, I hope readers will sort of feel the way I felt when I was writing a story, where even if you don't feel like you're enough, you're good enough, that you are, and you should keep going for your goals and going for the dreams that mean the most to you, because don't let other people say you're not smart enough or strong enough. Let yourself be the one that achieves those goals, and fights for what you believe in.
And then I really like both of these questions as kind of our last one, but I'm thinking maybe one more question, and it's a perfect one, I think, to end on. What advice would you give? So this is from our other Nate. What advice would you give someone for writing, especially for kids?
I guess I can jump in and start. So I would say write the story that speaks to you. Write the story that you can write. For me, it's a story about my dog and that also breathes fire and lots of food and things like that. And that's a story that spoke to my heart. And I would say find that story and write that story for you.
I think my answer will probably be similar. Don't I think it would be really helpful. I think sometimes when people try to approach children, they think, "Oh, I'm gonna write like a morality play." But if you dig down into the thing that makes you a little bit uncomfortable to write it, it's probably a good thing to write about because it means it's something that is important to you, right? Like if it makes you feel something when you're writing it, chances are there's somebody who will relate to you strongly while they're reading it. It may not be for everybody, but if you write honestly about your own feelings, I think that it resounds with other people. People can tell when you're being genuine. So if you pour that into your book, it's going to come across and somebody will take something away from it.
Okay, well, I think maybe we'll wrap things up there, but thank you so much, Julie and Ash, for coming here today and talking with us about your books, and for Scholastic and Little Brown as well. I know that I personally love both of your books. I love that we get to share them with you. And I'm really looking forward to what comes next from both of you. So thank you very, very much for coming, and I am bad at endings. So thank you very much, and yes, have a wonderful night, and again, much love to the both of you for writing such wonderful, wonderful books.
Yeah.
And hopefully I'll get to talk to you when the next one's there.
Yes. Thank you
Thank
all
you,
for joining.
Nathaniel.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye, guys.
Bye.